Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on our January 6th webinar. Today's webinar is part of a series of regular weekly webinars conducted by Native Connections, which is part of the Tribal Training and Technical Assistance Center. As attendees, you are automatically muted on your phones. There will be a question and answer period, at which point you can unmute your phone by pressing *6. Also, if you are just now joining us, what we're trying to do is not only sign in with your full name, but also your grantee affiliation. By changing the name as it's displayed, you can go up to the top of the attendees box. To the right, you will see a drop-down menu. By clicking that drop-down menu, you will see Edit My Info. Click on Edit My Info, and you will then be able to change your name as it is displayed. If you could please change your name so that it may display both your full name, first and last, and also your grantee affiliation, that would be incredibly helpful to us as we keep record of these webinars. Thank you. Again, today's webinar is part of the Tribal Training and Technical Assistance Center through the Native Connections Virtual TTA. For any questions about today's webinar or the program itself, this is your contact information for your Native Connections coordinators. My name is Josephine Keefe, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. As our facilitators, we will have Iris Prettypaint and Gary Newman. Again, we have weekly webinars scheduled through this month and next. These are our upcoming webinars. Next week, January 13th, will be identifying key respondent CRA interviews. January 27th, demonstrating the scoring process. And February 3rd, using the assessment to develop strategies. And here are our facilitators for today, just to bring faces to the names. We have, again, Dr. Iris Prettypaint and Gary Newman. And with that, I would like to turn it over to your first facilitator of the presentation, Iris Prettypaint.
Good morning. Thank you, Josephine. It's good to see all of you joining us today on this cold January morning. My name is Iris Prettypaint. I'm a member of the Blackfeet Nation and also a descendant of the Crow Nation. Today, I serve as the Native Connections Task Lead and serve in the role of helping to stand up our Native Connections TTA, virtual TTA that we're going to be providing to each of you. So today's presentation, we're hoping that, we can speak to you directly and answer any questions that you might have. And as you notice on the title for today's presentation, this is part 3, and we're hoping that as you work with your TTA coordinators, that they will get access for the other webinars that we've done and to bring you up to speed. But actually today, if you're joining us for the first time today, we always do a review of the previous webinar, and so you're able to see and listen to what we covered last week and get ready for the following week. So I'm very honored today to serve in this role for you, to be available to answer any questions that you might have. And we've been doing this kind of work for many years, and as we reach out to each of you, we realize that our goal is to customize, our training and technical assistance for you, because we know that each one of you have a very unique community. You have similar issues, but you live in a very unique cultural context in regards to where your land is, where your people are from, the languages they speak. So I just want to introduce myself to you that way, and also ask Gary if he would. And by the way, Gary, we're here in Spokane, Washington, from our headquarters, and Gary is calling in today from his home, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to introduce himself as well.
Thank you, Iris. Good morning and welcome, everyone. It's an honor to be working with Native Connections. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe, and I'm currently living here on the reservation in Evero, Montana, just north of Missoula. Thank you, Iris.
Thanks, Gary. So in just beginning today, the title of today's webinar, Native Connections, will always precede everything that we do. But our first webinar series, a 6-part webinar series, is on the Community Readiness Assessment model. And that model is a model that has been around for many years. It's been used by many tribal communities. And we have the opportunity today to also give you kind of a brief overview of it. Actually, these are the 3 learning objectives that we have for you today. And you'll see on every webinar that we do, the most important thing that we can do is to have objectives, so to help guide you as you know what to expect as we go over this model with you. And so we're going to review the process for the CRA and the step-by-step guide that we've been talking about for the last couple sessions. We also have a section of today's webinar that will discuss the importance of helping you to define your community as you get ready to do your CRA. We'll conclude today's webinar with saying a little bit about the CRA manual that each of you have. And if you don't have that manual today, I would ask all of the participants today to reach out to the email on the last slide of your coordinator and have them send that manual out to you. That manual includes the interview questions, the scoring sheets. It also goes into detail on an anchored rating scale for those questions and how we're able to acquire a score for the community that you're from. So just quickly here is, and you're probably thinking to yourself now, what part of the process do I need to know about, and where am I at? For the first step in the process is important to identify the issue. And for this Community Readiness Assessment model, the issue is suicide prevention. In advance, we already know that is the focus of our approach to this tool. When you look at the process and you go through it step by step, by the time you reach the second stage, today's webinar should help you make a final decision on the individuals you're going to interview, what organizations they might come from, what part of the community they might represent, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the actual interviews itself, the scoring process. And the reason this tool is so powerful is because once you know the score in the different dimensions of the model, there are recommendations for interventions that accompany that for you. And I'll just say a little bit about this quote that I took from the To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns. Can they see that on the bottom of their screen? Okay, so at the bottom of your screen, at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side, there's a To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns, and there's a link there. If you click on the Browse to, that will take you to that actual document where this quote comes from. And the reason I'm saying that and referencing that document is on Chapter 5, there's a whole chapter on community readiness. it's so important that you're able to read as many different materials as you can on this model, so that sometimes, people write in different ways about the models that they're developing. And we know that when you do prevention work, the parts of prevention that are challenging is to be able to understand what works, what is successful in my community. Why do I need to take into consideration the culture, the language, our teachings, our clan system? Why are those things important when I'm going to begin to do prevention work? And so this book that I'm mentioning to you today was developed by SAMHSA, and it's a very useful handbook that when you get ready to do your community readiness assessment and you open up this book here will help you with so many ideas. It was developed by very knowledgeable people, a group of people that put all of their good knowledge in one place. And, that's what we're always looking for. We always want someone to share with us the best resources that they have found. And that's our job, really, here, is to be able to bring forward as many resources as we can for you. And so you'll see as we go through the webinar today that's our goal, is to be able to create diagrams like this one that you're looking at. And on the outside of this circle, this is the process that I showed you on the slide before, is you first have to identify the issue. You have to define your community that you're going to draw from to do the interviews. Then you conduct them, you score them, and after you receive your score, our role is to help you to develop the strategies that you need to bring about change. Those of you that are familiar with this tool, you'll know that as we talk about the stages of readiness, if you look at the next circle coming from the outside and you look to the east, the cardinal point to the east, and you go clockwise, those are the stages of readiness that you have the potential of understanding where your community will score. And I can tell you from my experience in working on Native aspirations, working on different kinds of prevention efforts, it was seldom that I would see a community score over a 3. And what I say by a 3 is the first stage is no awareness at all. And what you hear when you know what no awareness is, you'll hear people make comments, and you'll hear them say, "Oh, that's just the way things are here," or "We've already tried that, and that won't work," or so much in denial or resistance, the second stage, that it's very painful to have a suicide in your community and have no one talk about it, not even have the words to describe what it is, and be so afraid of it that, when you bring it forward, you'll hear people say, "We don't talk about things like that," or "We're taught that, if we talk about this, we're going to welcome that kind of spirit." And yet we've had communities with very, simple but focused efforts on increasing the level of awareness about suicide, where people are able to kind of have a revelation, a realization that, I really think that was a suicide. I don't know it, I can't prove it, but, I'd like to do something about it. I'd like to see some change. All the way over to people saying, sign me up. I'm ready to help. If you plan something, I'll be there. I'll donate food. I'll donate my time. And, if there's something that you need for me to be able to do, I'll take the lead on it. And then you'll see communities move into the 4th and the 5th stages of readiness. the Community Readiness Assessment model, one of the lessons that we were able to learn as we were implementing this model is that before we used it, we were actually planning prevention programs around the readiness of the staff. And we were taking a look at who was working in prevention. And we had a lot of people in prevention that had backgrounds in social work and counseling, mental health, the community health representatives. And what we did was we made the mistake of planning prevention programs based on their level of readiness. And they were sometimes at stage 5. They were ready to do something, so the interventions that they created were at the 5th, 6th, and 7th stages, and they used all the resources for those stages, and everyone else was back at 1 and 2 in the community. And so with this tool, what you're able to do is you're able to close that gap, the gap of readiness, not your readiness, but the readiness of your people, the readiness of the families, the readiness of the young people that live in and around you. And I know that it's challenging. It's very challenging to live with denial and to not be able to recognize what it is that you're experiencing, especially when you have multiple people with ideations, multiple completions. And, it's so that denial and resistance can really drain your energy. But, when you begin to really recognize that that's just something that you have to go through and you have to figure out the interventions that align with that, then that's why most of us stay in this kind of work for years, because we have really witnessed the ability for people to move on this stage of readiness. And that is our hope for you today. That's why we're doing this for you. And that's what we're hoping today as we go through this information with you, that we can talk to you directly. This work is really about you today, so that you can say, if this is my role, if this is the grant that I'm participating in, and I'm going to be asked to do and complete a CRA, then these are the decisions that I need to make today about what I'm going to learn. There are so many valuable insights that you can acquire in doing a CRA. I've done a number of them. I've went out to communities, and they've decided that they wanted to do their CRA with young people, and that was their focus. And they wanted to build a plan based on what the young people, their level of readiness. I've had other communities that looked at it a little different. They wanted to have a cross-representation across everyone. And what this did was this allowed them to learn so much more about the issues that are related to suicide prevention. We know the issues that come up for in the communities, and every day we hear about them. We have people that will explain to us, in no uncertain terms that, this was drug-related, this was an alcohol-related suicide, and they're willing to come forward with those kinds of explanations. And so I know that some of you on the call today, when you think about 6 to 8 people in your community, today's the day to really decide who those people are that you'd like to interview. And that's our goal today, is to be able to get you ready to do that so you can complete those interviews and get ready to score them, and to be able to acquire those scores and then to go forward in your planning. It doesn't take long for decisions to be made about who we can interview. I've had people go in and complete a community readiness assessment in a day, and they scored the next day. And then before they left the community, they identified all their strategies. So it's not a lengthy process, but the more that we can help you explain. So you'll see at the top of the slide set, we're giving you the page numbers that take you directly to that page to help you to understand, that we're here to help you decide and choose your interventions that you want to do this year. And at the conclusion of this webinar today, in addition, you can type in your email address, and Josephine will send out this slide set to you, so you don't have to, try to take notes and get everything together as we go through this. This is another quote that is from To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns. I worked with both of these people, Maynette Benham and Wayne Stein, and, when I looked at their quote, it reminded me that what we want for ourselves is we know the philosophy of our people. We know what visioning is. We know how important it is to look into the future and to look for better things for our young people. We live that, particularly if we're parents today. We live and breathe our children's lives, and being able to do that, that's how we are able to make a decision about the information that we have for community readiness assessments, and have that information inform our next steps. So I have a polling question for you today, and Josephine is pulling it up on the screen. And those of you that have done this work, what I'd like to just poll you on today is, how are they going to fill that in? Just a second. I'd like to get a sense of how many communities, how many distinct communities do you have on your reservation, in your village, or if you're coming from an association today or a corporation. How many distinct communities do you have that you're working with? I know that I've looked over the 20 Native Connections communities and the 6 Garrett Lee Smith, and I'm just struck by the wide range of communities that you serve. And that's really important as you begin to, you'll all be different. Maybe some of you have, on your reservation, you have 2 tribes. But with those 2 tribes, you may have several different smaller communities that exist. And maybe your community is very small, and it looks like today, based on the poll that we have, we have a range that's coming up for folks. And I just want to give you each an opportunity to fill this out. And those of you that are staff on this call as well, I'd like for you to fill this poll out. And so you're looking at one of our respondents today. They serve over 50 communities. How are they going to decide the 6 to 8 interviews? And yet they'll need to make a decision about how they do that. And that's what your coordinators are here for. They're here to help guide you and help you to make those decisions. And the majority of the people on the webinar today, they're looking at 1 to 10 distinct communities that they're working with, and that's going to be their decision. Do I pick one from each one, or do I focus on a group? And we're going to get into that as we go forward. So thank you so much for the poll today. We'll keep those numbers in mind for each of the coordinators as we go forward. So I'd like to turn the presentation over to Gary, and he will help you to give you some more information about what we mean by defining your community. Gary?
Great. Thank you, Iris. In defining your communities, you'll need to make some decisions about just exactly who the community is that you're going to be doing the community readiness assessment with. And we wanted to give some examples of different types of communities and ways that they can be defined and ways that you might look at them, or perhaps ways that you might not have considered this particular group or subgroup as part of your community. And through this process, you may be doing that now. There's some different definitions. There's geographical communities. There's subgroups or geographical communities based on maybe ethnicity or age or gender. Then you've got different kind of systems: health, education, government, social or cultural networks, or other organizations that might not be part of your organization, but you work with them on a regular basis and they are part of your community. Taking a look at the map of the Flathead Reservation that I am living on here in Montana, it's about 1 million acres, and there are 9 separate and distinct communities identified. The reservation is big. Sometimes when we're looking at requesting funding, we may just define the community as the reservation community. But we know within the reservation community, there are 9 different and very distinct communities. You may look at the northwest corner of the reservation where we have Nirada, Hot Springs, Camas Prairie, where there's a large number of Kootenai population that live up there. You may also take a look at the Folsom Community, which is the largest community on the reservation and is right on the lake, Flathead Lake, and it's predominantly a non-native community. You go farther south to Pablo, where our tribal headquarters are located, and the Salish Kootenai College, and our housing program, and our early childhood services headquarters. That's a whole nother community within these communities that we need to consider and make decisions about when we're looking at community readiness. Farther down the reservation, you go down to Ronan, and Ronan is one of the largest tribal communities on the reservation and has a high school, and its makeup is even different. You travel farther south to St. Ignatius, and between Ronan and St. Ignatius is a very large rural and farming community. So there are a lot of non-natives that have homesteaded on the reservation in these areas, and they, too, are part of how we define our communities. When we work with communities, we need to take those into consideration. You travel to St. Ignatius, where our tribal health department headquarters are, and that combines rural, that combines the reservation, that combines a lot of Salish and Pend Oreille tribal members that live between St. Ignatius and even farther south to Arlee. So when we're looking at our communities, we're not just saying the whole reservation. We may define Arlee, we may even define St. Ignatius as separate communities. In those separate communities, we need to take a look at the different kind of subgroups that are within them. You'll need to do the same thing when you're working with your communities or when you're defining your community. Take these things into consideration: the age, the race, ethnicity, sex, disabilities, people commuting to work from long distance. You're taking a look at your age group between up to 24. There are a lot of them that do drive. Maybe there isn't public transportation. So that's another characteristic that you want to take a look at. Maybe seasonal employment in your communities. Maybe there's post and pole digging. Maybe there's Christmas treeing. Maybe there's cordwood, or maybe there's hunting, depending on the kinds of things that are available in your communities based on the season. Families and relationships are another subgroup, as is language. We have 2 separate languages on the reservation. We have Salish and we have Kootenai, and we have language immersion school for the Salish language. Kootenai is developing their own language immersion school now, and there are a number of subgroups that do speak the language, we need to take that into consideration. The veterans and the poverty level within our communities. Now, there's going to be a polling question about the types of subgroups that you may have in your community. And I see that it's up. So if you could just take a moment for young adults up to age 24, what other subgroups can you identify in your community? And there's a place to type in your answers. So take a moment and think about your communities, and are there other subgroups that we might not have identified? And if the team has subgroups that they can identify, please type them in as well. I see that we've got the LGBT and LGBTQ and the Two-Spirited, which are a subgroup of our communities that we need to consider as well. College students, that's another one. We have Salish Kootenai College on the reservation, and that is another subgroup that we need to consider, especially in the age group that we're looking at, up to age 24.
My computer is too old. It can't go on webinars. So our community was our advocacy group.
Oh, wonderful. An advocacy group. Thank you. We've also got single fathers and single mothers identified. We've got churches and spiritual identified as well. So these are some subgroups that we didn't have listed before, so I want to thank you for adding those additional subgroups. Homeless, that's another one. You're absolutely correct. We have a lot of people in our communities that they call couch surfing. They don't live in one place. They go stay in a relative's couch for a few days, but yet they don't have a home. So they're part of the homeless population. The native language speakers, yes. So as you can see with this polling question, the idea is to kind of think who's not at the table, think about who might be involved, and if they're a particular subgroup, you want to identify them and speak to that. Youth, caught in gang culture, absolutely, that's another one. Thank you all for your additions. I see that urban youth raised off the reservation, that's another large subgroup. Well, thank you for participating in this polling question. We'll move on. We also want to take...
Cyrus,
yes.
Can I just make a comment about the subgroups?
Certainly.
So you can see at this point that you have many different areas to draw from, and it's really important that you are a part of the decision-making on how the interviews, will go. And we give you a range of between 6 to 8 people. And some of those subgroups are very powerful representations in our communities. And, we have, in this particular Native Connections, we have a real focus on youth. And we know that when we empower young people, when we provide them any kind of training, any kind of leadership, I really believe in their voice. And we learned that lesson in Native Aspirations, and the work that we do is young people can talk to young people in a way that, sometimes, they say to us that we're too old. And they want to hear from young people, so that gives you an opportunity to really think through those subgroups. And sorry we took them down a little bit too quick, but the individual that mentioned the advocates, that's really a term that, might not be familiar to a lot of people, but those are individuals in our, particularly our smaller communities, because we have to wear so many hats. We almost become all of those different roles, and we serve a lot of different needs of people, but we have one job, and we have to know a little bit about everything. So thank you for that, Gary, and this just fits right into this next slide.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Thank you, Iris. When you take a look at the different systems within communities, those are another element of defining your community. It may be health, justice, government, social services, housing, education. On the reservation here, we have a job corps center. We also have the college, as I mentioned before, the language immersion school. We have the county and the state, Western Montana mental health centers. We have the culture committees. We have other programs like the Boys and Girls Club that service a lot of our youth as well. And so there are other systems and other communities within communities. And so we want to be mindful and consider those as well.
I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
If we had a certain percentage that didn't return, the questionnaires didn't return, what percentage is what do you call that? Acceptable amount? That's 8.
Iris, could you speak to that?
Yeah, the minimum to gain a score that will give you the ability to work with in the selection of your interventions is 6. That's the minimum. And if you go up to 8, what's that?
There's no percentage?
No, if you do the interviews and you do 6, that's the minimum. And you can do up to 8 interviews, but if you go above that, you know, the authors of this model, Pam Jumper-Sermon and Barb Plested, you know, when they teach it, they explain to us that, you know, even if you do more interviews, you still acquire a very similar score.
Oh, okay.
Because, yeah, so you can do 6 of them at the minimum, and that will give you a good CRA score.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Taking a look at the slide that's up now, it shows the Confederate Salish and Kootenai Tribes Tribal Health Services and the network that the services, the service unit
Do we know who that lady is?
provides. They're in different communities throughout the reservation. Some provide services to a lot more Kootenays who live on the reservation, and some provide services to Salish or Pend Oreille or Kalispel. And the clinics understand that, and they know that. For example, there are a lot of veterans that utilize services in one particular area more than the other because it's transportation and it's more convenient for them to get to those communities. I just wanted to put that slide up because within the tribal system, there are other communities that we need to consider as well. So you're going to be doing the same thing when you define your communities. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Iris.
Yeah, let me just say that you know, the reason that we, you know, that I really like these slides is every one of our communities have very unique and complex networks that we work in and around, and sometimes, you know, our services are underneath the tribal system. Other times our services might be linked to the state, or they could be in different parts of the tribal infrastructure. So it's not always the same, and that's fine. So I really appreciate the example, Gary, this morning that you shared with us from your community. And, you know, that over the last several years, we've probably completed over 100 community readiness assessments with communities that we've worked with. And we're able to, over time, we're able to look at what their pre-score was, and then when they come down to the end of their first year, we help them to do a post-CRA, so they're able to go back in and see where the change was in their dimensions. And sometimes you'll see change in one and others won't change at all, or they'll lose ground. And so you're always looking at the 6 dimensions, and that's what drives the stages. So these 2 documents that we have here, I just have screenshots of them for you today. And the first one is the Community Readiness Manual. And that document is available to you today. And like I said, if you don't have a copy of it, reach out to your coordinators, and we'll make sure that you definitely get a copy of this manual. The second document that you see on the screen, what we did was we pulled out the actual interview questions, and we made a document for you so that when you get those through the email, you can actually copy that document by itself, and you can use that in your interviews so that you know you have a total of 30 questions that you'll be asking those key respondents or those individuals from your communities. And, it's really important that you take a look at the questions and that you familiarize yourself with them, and, that you have an opportunity to really go forward with some confidence in doing these interviews. I can remember the first time that I did this interview, this tool, and, I had to really read through the questions, and I sort of had to answer them myself so that I could get ready for, what some of the answers might be. And that's one way that you learn a tool, is you just give it to yourself and apply it to yourself. So what we've done for you as well is, one of the challenges that we've seen with the model was the scoring. And so there are scoring sheets in the manual, but what we've created for you is kind of an Excel workbook where that if you enter in the scores on your sheet, they will total, at the end for you, because when you get together for the scoring, you'll each come together with your scoring sheets, and then you'll have part of the workbook that will look like this. So you see the dimension, the 6 dimensions off to your left-hand side. And so what's confusing is sometimes then it switches back to letters. So you have dimension A, the existing efforts in the community. You have the second dimension, that's the third. And then across the top, this is the worksheet where you're going to combine your scores. These are anchored scores for each of the questions, and that's why you have to have discussion and come to a consensus. You don't average the scores. You have to talk about them. You have to discuss, what the interviews were discussing, and then decide how you're going to score those. And so, for example, this worksheet, if you did 6 interviews, then you would enter it up to the 6th interview, and you would divide by 6. This one today we filled in for 8 interviews, and we divide the end score by 8, and it's calculated per dimension. And so the total combined score for each dimension, as you see, comes up to 9. So each one of the dimensions gives you a 1.5. And then at the bottom, again, these formulas will be set for you based upon how many interviews you do. And then you divide the 9 by the number of interviews that you did. So in this one, we have a 6 in there if you did 6 interviews or if you did 8. And then your overall stage of readiness here for this community is 1.5. So the scoring is going to be our next webinar. We'll be going into very detailed descriptions for you. I think that's one of the challenging parts of this tool is we want to make sure that you're able to acquire the most accurate score for your community so that your planning is aligned with the strategies that you want to do. And so the next steps that you have going forward is to, first of all, review the manual, take a look at the 30 questions, and as you look at them in the tool, just take some notes of how many questions are in each dimension. You'll see that the first dimension has a total of 10 questions, and then they go down to like 4 and 3 for the different dimensions. But that'll help you to understand, like how much time should I spend on this set of questions, because it's going to be, we've done interviews anywhere from a half hour to an hour, and they've worked very well. Sometimes, if you find someone in the community and they're so knowledgeable and they have so much history about, what's going on, that interview might go a little longer. But again, as soon as you complete your interviews, the coordinators are prepared to set up a meeting with you and help you to complete your scoring. You don't have to wait for the webinars in the series that we have. Our goal is to have you complete your CRA before the end of January. That's our goal. And we want to work with you this entire month to be able to do that. Do you have a question? Okay, I'll turn this back over to Josephine.
Okay, and as you'll see, here are some website links to help you further along with this process. SAMHSA.gov/tribal-TTAC will give you some great training resources, as well as training.sprc.org. And also, please, just to remind you all of the free resources, down in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, you will see a menu that says free resources. There will be 2 links there. One says Suicide Prevention Guide. The other says To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns. Both of those links will lead you to a downloadable version of the book, To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns. Again, by accessing that, you can click on the title, and in the menu, in the bar at the bottom there, you'll see the URL link appear. To the left of that, it says Browse To. By clicking on Browse To, it will immediately open up to that page where you can find a downloadable PDF of that book, To Live to See the Great Day That Dawns. And our upcoming webinar next week will be on January 13th, and that will be Native Connections Identifying Key Respondent CRA Interviews, Part 4 of our 6-part CRA series. The learning objectives for that upcoming webinar are posted here: reviewing the CRA manual, interview questions and scoring sheet, identifying the 5 CRA guidelines and discussing the interview process and dynamics, and also preparing the completed interviews for the scoring process. At this point, we would like to open it up for some questions from attendees. You can unmute your phone by pressing *6, or to the right-hand side of your page, you will see a chat box open. You can type your question into the chat box, and we will review those questions and answer them as they come in.
Okay, someone has their phone line open.
Are we muted or unmuted? Muted? again, to share or to ask a question or share a comment, you can type your question or comment into the chat box to the right-hand side of your page, or you can unmute your phone by pressing *6. And to help cut down on any background noise, it would be helpful if you remain muted if you do not have a question or comment. And again, to unmute, press *6.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm ready to start scoring. I have 10 assessments filled out. Do you have a phone number I could call if I have any questions regarding scoring?
Yes, this is Iris, and why don't you call me, and I want to find out who your assigned coordinator is. Can you tell me what grantee I'm speaking to?
We're from the Untitled tribe in Mountain Village, Alaska.
Okay, Gary, is that your community?
Yes, it is.
Oh, great.
Yes,
Can you exchange a number with her today?
Absolutely. Let me give it to you right now. Area code 509-879-5628.
Okay, Gary, thank you.
You bet.
And next we have a question from Round Valley. Our Native Connection staff will be doing interviews. Are there any suggestions or cautions for identifying scores? We're thinking a combination of community members and service providers.
Sure, Julia and Elizabeth, if you do the interviews, if the staff conduct the interviews, just make sure that the people that are going to do the scoring are not the same people that do the interviews. And that's the only thing that you have to remember to be able to acquire a score is to, and if your staff are going to help to do the scoring, then they can't interview. So that's the only distinction that you have to have in that planning.
We have another question from Raymond of Namboy Pueblo. Can you use more than one group to contact questions for CRA?
Raymond, can you dial into the call? Can I just ask you for a little bit of clarification on what you mean by group? Can you press *6?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Raymond.
Hi. Yeah, when I'm referring to groups, I'm pertaining to the identified target, so for the 6 to 8 interviews. So I was to take, we'll say, 3 youth from a particular group and then 3 from the medical or 3 elders or something. Is that possible? Or
sure.
Are we sticking to one particular group for all key components?
No, you can select a representation across your community. That's your decision on, who you select to interview. And, so if you decide to do everybody from one group, that's the CRA score that you'll get. But if you select across the community, and that's really what I would think would be preference to get a score, is to just be mindful of, is there any part of the system in the community that you might have that you don't have any representation from. And so if the youth, I'm just trying to find the slide that if you're going to select the youth, then, you think about these systems. Are they going to be coming from education? Are these going to be youth that are going to be served by the social service system? And then you select the elders. Are the elders going to be, again, what system would they be coming from their particular housing, or are you just you want that subgroup of elders that are so knowledgeable of the community that they would be able to, give you good information on the questionnaire?
Yeah, that way it was across the board, and it wasn't just. I was thinking, getting the information from all the individuals that would be stakeholders in this versus just one group.
Yeah, that's right. And when you read your manual, that's going to walk you through all different kinds of suggestions. And Gary covered those earlier, so that you have these subgroups, but you also have, that you can have people. I always listen to people that talk about the cultural and the social networks that exist in the community. Maybe there's a representation from there. But yeah, you will know the different ages, the different genders, the different locations, and that when you do your selections, that all comes with your decision.
Okay, and then just for clarification, while I still have you on the phone here, and it was pertaining to the question prior to mine, just for distinction and clarification, if I'm going to be doing the scoring, I don't do the interview, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to give you a quick example is, we have had people that have tried to do that, and then you see the scores are influenced because you're biased by interviewing, and you listen to the person, and you have a strong, opinion yourself. And so you're in the interviewing process, you're listening to everyone's ideas. When you get to the scoring, and when you score and you didn't have anything to do with the interviews, then you're not bringing any of those, really strong feelings because someone could have told you a really powerful story, really emotional story, and that follows you into the scoring. So I've seen it go where the score, when they finished scoring it, it was either so low that they had brought, the interventions down to the lowest level, or I've seen a score that was up in the 7th stage, and there's just no way that community could be at that level of readiness. So you're always trying to, make sure that you separate those two.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll move the slide deck over here. Anyone else have any other questions? And thank you for that, Julia and Elizabeth. Good luck with your interviews. I look forward to helping everybody with their scoring and going forward, and making the connections with your coordinator. So the screen that you see up in front of you, these are the direct lines to each of the coordinators. Each one of them are assigned to 5 of you. And their role is to listen for your phone call, your email, and to give we do updates each week on the status of where you are. And like I said, we have some of the grantees that have done these before, and they're ready to finish up their scoring this week. Others are, they're still selecting the people to be interviewed. And so we have all these tools right here ready to be sent out to you. And I'm excited to have you become the experts on the Community Readiness Assessment model.
And if there are no further questions, this will conclude our webinar for today. I believe we might have someone typing a last question here. Again, if there are any questions, please, you can unmute your phone by pressing *6, or you can use the chat function to the right-hand side of your screen there.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your time today. I appreciate it very much. And Gary, thank you for joining us from Montana today. And thank you to all of our tech staff and all of you that dialed in. And again, I really appreciate you adding to the attendee list your grantee affiliation. And it's an honor for me to work with you on Native Connections and look forward to connecting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Slides will be available shortly for all of the participants today. Thank you again and have a great rest of your day.